Okay. Okay, I think I'm here now. Hopefully this is going live. Had a few problems this morning getting set up and started. Did go for about half an hour with one camera. Didn't work quite so well, so managed to kick it off. I'll wait for a few more people to turn up. I'm going to click over to Facebook page as well, just upload to let everybody know that we're back. We're back after there we go. Get that done. There we go. Just posting up to Facebook page now. Hopefully a few more people can join us. We had a little collection of people in the room. It's the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? This is the third lockdown we're in now. As I said before, I'm going to work on a portrait today, a self-portrait, and I talked a little bit about the composition and the types of things, qualities I want to put into the artwork. I will be able to sort of jump straight hopefully now onto getting that done. And let's click that onto my other page, go to that page, and post that, and come back to the page. Everything's moving, which is great. So when you come back into the room, please say hello. And yeah, I'll continue to draw. Say if you want to pop in, it's all about art. So if you want to have a conversation about art, if you have a question about the work that you're working on at the moment and you're not sure what to do, ask. We'll have a talk about it. It's quite a low-key, informal sketching class, if you like. So what I've got here today, you can see up in front of me, I've got my image over on the right hand side. I've got mine up on that camera's just frozen again. Oh, come on cameras, work with me. I'm not sure what is going on today with these cameras. So I just had another view join us, so hello, good to see you. Apologies for all the technical issues this morning. Okay, so have a look at this. If anybody knows how to fix all this stuff, please let me know. See if we can configure the video so we can get it started again. Control default. No, nothing's working today. Desi, we are back again, but unfortunately there's no camera. It worked for about 2 seconds and then clicked back off again. And what is going on with this today? Lots of cables being unplugged and plugged back in as we speak. I'm not too sure why we're going to fix this today. So yeah, unless you just want to have an art chat, I'll put me back up to my face here. Yeah, so if you want to have just a general conversation about art chat, probably won't make it 2 hours talk, but yeah, ask any questions that you're having issues with your artwork. Anything you've seen. I know Landscape Artist of the Year started over on Sky Arts TV as well. I haven't watched this episode yet, that came out earlier on this week. I was keeping that for my Sunday afternoon. So yeah, I mean, if you've seen it already and there's something on there which particularly interests you, talk about it. If you've seen the artwork that you online recently, talk talk about as well. I went to a couple of exhibitions prior to this lockdown that we're in. I went over to the Ulster Museum. You can book a ticket before this third lockdown. You can book a ticket to go and see the exhibition that was on at the moment, which is, well, there's two. There's the RUA, which is the Royal Ulster Academy show, which has a collection of artwork from both the academicians and from the general public as well who submit work. And it's a brilliant exhibition to go and see. There is a vast wealth of art out there, especially in Northern Ireland, and I was blown away by the quality of it. Also, what's on at the moment, there is a Renoir that they have up there, and to go see a Renoir is why not just use the working camera, focus on the page and talk to the background. I'll try that. But the problem is it's on a very, very short cable, and it's perched up on top of my computer, and it won't reach around to where the other camera is. So I can't just like move it around, unfortunately, Michael. I would have done it. Believe me. Yeah, but there's a Renoir exhibition on in the Ulster Museum at the moment, and you get to get up close and personal with the work. What really surprised me was there are other works around, lots of prints by different artists. There's Manet there as well, for example, and there are some Rembrandt etchings there, another exhibition. So I know it's closed at the moment, but as soon as lockdown eases and you can get to it, if you can go down to the Ulster Museum and then have a look at those exhibitions, really, really worth seeing. Let's have a quick fiddle. Hopefully sometimes when you kind of give it 5 minutes, it kind of, these cameras sort themselves out. But I've got a funny feeling I'm going to be spending my afternoon trying to figure out how to work this. So I'm going to close that camera down. And start back up again and see what happens. There we go, it's gone black, and I'll try and load it back up again. If it doesn't work, I'll try and sort this all out, get it all working again, and hopefully might not be this week, which is quite sad because I was looking forward to seeing you guys and doing some work for you. Capture device, add that source. It's a very boring conversation for you to listen to. I am the room tap pad myself, so guys, keep on talking. Michael, what have you been working on recently? I think you've done a picture of a boxer last time we spoke. Are you working on anything else new? Haha! I do believe we have a camera. Right, okay, right. I'm going to keep on going and hopefully, fingers crossed, this works. As I said, you give it 5 minutes and it starts working again. I haven't changed any other settings. I haven't unplugged a cable or anything, but it seems to be working. So I'm going to move this gingerly over so you can see more of the screen. There we go. Right, get drawing quickly before it all finishes. So I'm going to work on this portrait. I was going to say, when I printed off this picture, let's see that camera there. You can see how much information is lost by the printout. Now normally I like working from prints rather than working from a screen because of the light issue. But funnily enough, when the print came out, it was so dark that all the information's disappeared. I am just left with the image of my head and my hand. There's something quite nice about that. But what it does help me do as well, it kind of helps me figure out the space of these things on my picture plane. So I can use this still just to give me a formal breakdown about where I've got certain elements. You see I'm drawing really lightly to begin with. I think before Christmas I was working on a figurative portrait that was in a book by Juliet Aristides. It was classical drawing, I think it was, from Right Lessons in Classical Drawing. And the image I posted up on Instagram, and I was really chuffed that Juliet Aristides actually commented on it as well. It was said, it was a good rendition of the drawing. So I was really pleased that she had actually seen it as well and got some feedback. So you never know when you do your artwork and you put it out there into the ether when people get to see it, who is actually getting to see your artwork. And to go to the person actually who created the original artwork, who wrote the book, to comment back onto your work gives you a real big boost and lift. So I was really sort of kind of proud of that, that the level of work that she was doing. She even took the time to make a comment on it, so it was very much appreciated. So let me see, kind of giving myself this kind of space now to place both the head and the hand, and how far away that hand is from the face. So I've got an idea of where my chin is there, in the top of my head. Again, this is working from just approximations to start off with. That's why it's so light. You're still doing a charcoal drawing of Prince. It's pretty cool. Zoom in a little bit, just so you can hopefully see. There's not much light on that. It seems to get a bit dark. You can just about see the imagery there of the top of my head, bottom of my chin. And as I scroll that down, how far away that is going to be from my hand. Now I can increase the size of my head if I want to at this stage, or move my hands around, but I want to kind of get them in an approximation. When I look at the image, it's at a slight angle. It's not straight up and down, head to hand. It's at a slight angle, and I can move that angle back to my page and give a quick suggestion of where that hand is, say the top of my thumb, and the space in between. Maybe just lit up a little bit. I might increase the size of my head if that's the case. If I've got so much space underneath that, I might increase the size of my head to the page, so I could say that's where my chin is, and if that becomes my head now, I can see that kind of fits in 1.5. See, that's where my hand is, and so I've got a bit of an indication there of, I'm drawing the overall shape around my hand, not the fingers etc, but the actual block of my hand. So just getting that general shape of that hand in, and the size and scale of it as opposed to the head. I'm trying to get those things kind of placed in first before I go into sort of quality of the background, things like that. I can now look at the shape of my hand on the side of my head here, and the rough angle of my arm coming out. Now when I was looking at the Sargents before, there were these marks underneath the portrait you could just make out of, where he's basically location finding, the imagery of where certain elements went of the portraiture, and they kind of get pushed back into the drawing as you start to develop the details of the drawing. You don't tend to see these little tiny sketchy marks to begin with. So everything's quite light at this moment of where things are. I can look at sort of spaces of shapes of that leg that comes down this way. And how that touches the knee up there. It comes back up this way. I'm kind of looking at shapes, so looking at this kind of angle between my elbow and my knee. You start to think that the knees are round, or the top of your knee is round. It actually isn't when you kind of break it down and look at it a little bit more closely, and you can start to follow these angles. You know, I can look at how far it comes out from this part of my elbow that comes down and out. If I continue that angle out, I'll catch the far edge of that knee there, and it helps to keep things in proportion and scale with each other. How you can move one element to the next element, how you can sort of navigate around the whole of the image. All those kind of, you know, you might find that you've drawn a perfect hand up here, but you've got to make that relate to the size of the elbow, and make that relate to the size of the knee. And if these things don't connect, it starts to look slightly out of proportion. And it's this stage is moving around portrait, trying to capture where everything is in it. You're experimenting on the sideline with blending techniques because his face is a bit blotchy, and I need to find a way of highlighting with the eraser but maintain smooth transitions from light to dark. See if you can try doing those transitions with the charcoal. You can blend or lift charcoal off as well with layers. If that's the exercise, what I would suggest is try doing large squares of a light application of charcoal, so it's really even all over, and then try and lift off half of that layer evenly as a technique or an exercise, if you like. So looking at this kind of elbow in relationship to this knee that comes down, so this is just a suggestion where the hand is at the moment, this is a suggestion where the head is, and I'm starting to make the relationship between that head, elbow, arm and knee, and bring all these elements together. Looking at how far that line comes down before it starts to go off in this direction. If I took that point where that angle changes and went back up in this direction upwards, as you can see on the photograph on the screen, I do get to the sort of the armpit area of where the arm joins the body, and I look at that angle, and it's about at the moment there, and it comes back down on that angle. Under my hand I have my hat. Now I'm starting to see this hand is in this big overall space a little bit too big. It needs to drop back this way a little bit, so I'm not too worried about changing things that I need to change. You know, I can start to see that my face angle comes down that way and then comes up that way, and then the forehead comes back that way. So I'm laying the edge of my pencil against the image to get the angle, and then moving that angle to my page seeing it and visualizing it on the blank page, maybe we can make a mark. You can draw it down like that way. Or you can use another pencil. So after you've got the mark, you can use another pencil to go over the top and mark it in that way, and build up. They are suggestive marks at the moment. They are not the ones necessarily that'll end up in the finished portrait, but it's to get me started. It's to get rid of, one, that fear of the blank page. Two, you're not worried about making mistakes because you probably have not put it down in the right place, so you draw lightly and you build the portrait up that way. Now I'm kind of breaking the whole process down step by step. This, as you've been doing after you've been doing it for a while, is quite immediate, and you are sort of trusting your eye, but by checking it against the drawing consistently all the way through. Little elements of how things move around the space and shape. So I'm starting to get where roughly the size of my head is, as opposed to the length of my arm, the body shape in between the hair that comes down. That will come down this way and come out from the bottom of the chin. It's about there. The bottom of the chin is now, see, moved down already. The hair doesn't drop straight down, it comes across the body that way. And it almost joins roughly around about that point, and it kicks back out again this way. And on the top of that is roughly where the top of my hat is. Now, there's a great space between the top of my hat that's where the top of the hat is, and you can see where I've had this hand placed down here. I need to shift it back up again. I don't expect perfection from myself straight away, and it's a hard thing, especially when you're starting off. There's such a desperation to get things right, be right all the time and be perfect, and there's a frustration, a high level of expectation and a lot of frustration where you're starting off and you're really frustrated that you're not doing the things that you want to do pictorially, and it's a real challenge, I think, to understand that you're not gonna be perfect straight away. You can develop a drawing. You don't have to lay everything down perfectly. It's too much to start off with, and I think that's where a lot of people trip up in their early stages. They'll get a little bit of achievement, but they'll get so frustrated with the drawing, or so demoralized that they know that they're no good as a professional artist. You're not going to be. You think about any walk of life that you do, you were never perfect starting off, and you will probably never be perfect. There's always an element of developing your drawing. So to remove that, give yourself a break and allow yourself to search out and study the drawing. This is where kind of drawings are kind of more interesting, is where you can really see where the artist has worked the portrait to develop it. And I think that's the same with when you look at Sargent's works as well. There are areas where you can see his adjustments within his drawings, where he's made a mark of where a neck is, and then later on he can put another one. I was looking at the information beside the portraits about the different experiences people had, and they said that Sargent was standing there muttering to himself and just shouting out, going, "Demons, demons!" And this was his frustration. The way he would project out what was frustrating him was when he put a mark down, he'd tell it off. He was blaming the mark. That is a demon mark. No, wrong place. And he go here. He was actually verbalizing his corrections. Now I'm not like that, unfortunately, because I think it adds to his eccentricity, and also the performance of doing that portrait for the sitter as well is quite interesting. I'm just kind of plotting out where the top of this hand is. If you looked at that in isolation, if I zoom in, that does not look like a hand at the moment. You can see elements of it, and you can see how it may get up a little bit higher this way and change the angle of it. and how that comes out to the back of the thumb this way, and the angle here. All of these angles will eventually go to make up the area in which the hand will be. I'm not drawing the hand, if that makes sense. I don't have that expectation in my head to make that perfect element of the hand straight away. When Sargent would draw, he would consider the mark a lot longer than I'm doing right now. I'm a little bit more immediate, and I like more of the sculptural element of shifting things around. Once I've refined this, I will knock it back, rub out all the areas I don't want within it, and be a little bit more definite with some of the marks, and then I'm going to lay down a larger swathe of graphite. I can start blocking in the background as well and work the whole portrait together rather than working on a perfect area up here and slowly working my way down. I like to work on the entirety of the whole picture so it's cohesive and all together. Any reason for choosing white and not light grey paper? Did you want to keep to the white paper to help the highlights of the image? It will certainly help. I think there's a lovely quality to using, say, a grey paper or a toned paper as well, because it gives you that depth. That mid-tone grey is half of your work already. But I want to really build up the depth of the darks, so I know that the blacks will be black, and certainly using that mid-tone. If you can see some of the blotchy areas that are on the photograph around the head, etc., that would be the natural colour of the paper. I want to create that subtlety myself. It's just a choice I've decided to do this time. I have certainly used grey paper before, and there's a wonderful quality to it. But I think there's for me, I just want to be more sculptural, so I'm starting off from a clean white slate, if you like. And it just allows me to see some of these marks that I've put down a little bit easier. I know this whole area is really, really dark, and then breaks out into this little bit of light that's underneath this arm, and it's really, really subtle. And I've got more control over that subtlety if I haven't got a mid-tone. That makes sense. But I do love mid-tone paper. I often like to draw on that rather than white paper. Edges of things as well will become tighter and crisper, others will become softer. So areas, say, around this arm are very, very crisp, and the minute they're very fluffy because I'm kind of chicken scratching in my marks in. I think you would find with Sargent he'd be much more definite where his marks were, because he'd be considering them a little bit longer than I'm doing right now. I can see where hair marks come out. I mean, at this stage people go, how do you draw hair? I don't necessarily tend to draw individual strands. I draw shapes of hair, shapes of highlight and shapes of darks, because that gives you the form of where the hair starts to fall, and eventually it's like a texture that you build up rather than an individual strand of each individual hair strand. There we go. So looking at the fingers as well, I'm looking at the length of this first finger to the position of that thumb and where that falls, and then where the second finger is kind of joined together with the third finger, which falls on a slight angle this way. So again, I'm drawing positionings of fingers rather than fingers in themselves. So I can do the same with this little finger here, how far away that is away from that finger. It's about there. So I start to get the idea of where my hand is in space and build up the hand. Often when you see people drawing their hands, they draw every finger like a sausage, and when you actually look at the hand, you can see it's almost in plane form, like blocks. So you go from this knuckle on the back of the thumb into this direction, and I hit the knuckle where it is for this finger, and then the knuckle below it for the second finger, and the third knuckle is slightly back. The little finger itself is hardly there. What I've noticed is maybe this is a bit wide, so I'm going to narrow it a little bit. because I think this line comes up this way a little bit more, which is where that brim of the hat comes. It comes out this way, so it helps me then capture the angle of the shadows on the back of the hand, and they start to join up a little bit better. If that all makes sense. Excuse me. Click over there so you can see that. There we go. We seem to have lost our other little friend who joined us, Will. He seems to have disappeared, which is quite good. So now get the space in between these two fingers where you've got a curve around that little finger, and then it's almost like a straight line in, and the thickness of this one. So you can see how these fingers kind of animate themselves around in structural lines rather than trying to do it all in one go. Breaking these things down now give me a sense of the size and scale of my hand in comparison with my head, the position of the two and quite well spaced. I can then look at some of the features that I've got where my cheek kicks back in this way, and the beard comes straight down this, well, not straight down, but a slight angled down, and then my chin and the width of it. So already I've got the basic form starting to appear. And this is before any rendering, before any positioning and textures and things like that. There we go. I think that's where the back of that jawline is. There's a slight bit that comes out for where the ear is coming out this way. So I'm even marking down positions of areas of featured areas that I'll use later on. But once you've got all that down and you're happy with it, it makes it easier to render because you're not having to worry about, putting lots of details and textures into something that's not in the right place that you then have to shift later on. That becomes a lot harder to do. I can see where my eye is in comparison where the wrist is. I think I might just want to put in a little bit where that wrist is, because there's a space in between that and my cheek, and I think that's too wide at the moment. I think that's quite a good place for the rest of this form, but this is too far, so I might have to bring this out a little bit. So you can see how I've moved that cheek in a little bit, and then the chin comes down a little bit, so that again this might move around a little bit more. And I think that's the new position of where my chin is. So initially when I first started off, if I zoom that up, if I had somebody else here to help me, I would have somebody to work my cameras for me at the same time. So you can see initially when I started off and I did the head, and I kind of made a rough guide of where the head was, and I moved the chin down to here, then I moved it down to there, now moved it down to here. I've been able to do that because as I've developed the rest of the drawing, I've related it back to different areas, and you can just see where things don't quite meet up properly. So it's a bit like creating your own dots in a dot-to-dot picture, where you're putting down your marks consistently to see what works, what doesn't work, where these lines best meet and where they definitely need to develop and refine themselves. As that comes out and up and then back in again, and then gone across that way. So this is the centre of my head here, so this comes back up a little bit. There's a little bit of my what I call a widow's peak. This is a family trait, by the way. My dad has it, my granddad had it as well. In fact, my granddad had sort of really dark hair right up until he till he passed, and he always had it slicked back. I remember the Brylcreem sat on in the bathroom, and he also had that sort of steel comb. He'd always stick it back over the top of his head. And it's funny, when you start to draw portraits of yourself, you can start to see little elements of sort of family members as well. So certain things of my dad that I can see in my face, and certain things of my mother I can see in my face. My dad would probably see all the best things of his. He's a good looking man. He just turned 83 just after Christmas, so happy birthday to him. I'm looking at this shadow. Don't forget, shadow shapes as well as features are kind of important to place in as well, because they give you space for the more recognisable elements. So, you know, if we're looking at the space around this chin here, gives you where the edge of where this hair comes down, and this hair coming up then meets around the back of that ear, so I can see where the ear is about there. It just reminds me of that ear that we drew on Giulietta Aristotti's portrait of a figure we might have seen in the demo before Christmas. And it was such a well observed, almost effortlessly drawn ear. There wasn't many marks in it, but it was beautifully positioned. And sometimes the positioning of something comes from the negative space. I'm using a negative space from the back of the chin to this hair underneath the chin, and looking at that kind of shape, and that's given me where the location of that ear is. So rather than trying to draw the ear, drawing the space around the ear sometimes helps you find it. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you're not necessarily drawing things, you're drawing the position of things at the moment. I can see I can bring this hair in a little bit more here. This line is too far off to the right hand side, so I'm going to bring this hair in. And it might have a knock-on effect as to where that mark is. And that might move that down a bit. So you can't see it, I can. Let's see. Make sure that's in shot. There you go. From the photograph, there's a lovely, almost quiff of hair that sits up, and the angle that starts to come round. Now, following that angle coming around, it's wider here at the top, from the top of my forehead, and then gets narrower as it comes around. And following that arc, and I can see the space between here and here. I can see the space in between, you know, how wide this area is as opposed to this area. It's about 2/3 of that, so that's about 2/3. So I know that that space is what should be here, and that's how I'm kind of judging these things. And as it comes down, there's a certain highlight of the back of that hair, which is almost indicating where the back of this hair comes round. So I'm giving the depth to my side, to my head as well, to make sure the head looks like it's three-dimensional. I need space there, and often when we get caught up with drawing faces, we forget about the space and the width and the size of the head that the hair sits on. We end up drawing like a skull, and the hair becomes slick to it, and kind of it looks a bit too thin. So when we look at the portrait, you kind of go, look, the face looks amazing, but it doesn't look, the head doesn't look right. It's because of this space. You've got to think there's a cranium back here. You should start to see how that would actually fit in, how this would come around over where the eyes would sit. You know, without drawing eyes in, I can give an indication, a rough indication about how those eyes would actually fit on that skull. So I can see roughly the eyes are kind of coming here, and even draw as a plane how they would look across that way, where my nose would come down, and the space from the side of my cheek where I had my chin initially is actually a good position for my nose. Maybe a bit low down. You know how that hair comes out from my nose to create the top of my moustache, and how that then goes across the face that way. Then I might push this cheek out a little bit more. And again, if I'm pushing this cheek out a little bit, I've got a space in between here and my wrist. And it needs to come out a bit further, I think. So you can start to see just little marks. I'm not worried too much about perfection of them. It's just little marks at the moment. I'm going to rub, once I've got this stage done and I've erased the marks that are sort of definitely not in the right place, you know, where I've had the bottom of the hand down here to get rid of them, even though it's going to be in the dark, I want to keep the accuracy of the drawing first, and then I can start to render and start that positioning of things. I won't be showing the finished element of this portrait next week because you're not allowed to show them on social media, but I think showing the structural start of something is sometimes more valuable than just seeing the end result of it. If it gets on the show, I won't be able to show it at all. If I don't get on the show, I'll be able to show you at that stage. But I said there's no guarantee to these things. I'm sure there's an amazing amount of portraits that are going to be produced this, because the Sky Portrait Artist of the Week during lockdown was kind of so popular. I think a lot of people will have a go at doing this, and I'm kind of looking forward to the artists for next year, because the level of artwork out there is amazing. It'd be interesting to see what people bring to the table. It'll definitely make their job a lot harder, I think. But if you think of having a go, do have a go. I mean, you would be surprised that, you know, people just having a go and testing themselves and what work they produce. You might be on it, and as an experience, it's a real challenge, but it's a real honour and pleasure as well to get onto the program. So again, I'm making all these little wispy marks of where, move that out a little bit, of where hair marks are. These are adjustable, and hopefully wait for my screen to catch up. There's a slight delay between me doing this and what comes out on your screen. I just want to make sure everything's in shot. Nearly there. Yeah, okay. So certainly after, you know, starting this out, some of the marks went down a lot easier than others. You know, if you think about my chin, I've moved it like 4 or 5 times already. But the mark I use for my elbow seems to be in the right place. And, you know, why does some things work and some things don't? I think as you draw more, you make less error. I think you are more accurate with your observation and your mark making. Certainly when you're concentrating on it more specifically, you'll make less mistakes. So if you're constantly distracted, or you're doing something else at the same time and going back to it and doing something else, you know, that kind of breaking is, if you're doing a current drawing but you're also chatting to your mates online, and then, you know, that can be a slight distraction. Drawing for 20 minutes, taking a break, coming back to it the next day, can often help you see exactly where you need to move things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is try to minimize the frustration about adjustments is something I'm talking about, but also just accurately recording what it is you want to do, being honest with yourself visually. What is, where is this mark? Is this in the right place? If it's not, you got to move it. You know, you can fudge, you can kind of go, oh, I'll be okay, nobody will know. You know, and that's the problem. So don't try and con yourself. You know, if you can see elements that are not quite right, just be honest with yourself about what isn't quite right about them. I'm looking at the space of this hat now as well. In comparison to this hand is the indicator of about the size and scale of this hat. You know, I'm looking at the space in between where this finger is, which is about here. Coming up to where that hand is. And how that comes out this way to a point about there, and then it comes round and down this way. This line stops there, almost in line with that finger, so then that finger needs to come out to about there, and there's a slight kick back from where the band of the hat is, and this isn't the brim, this is the actual hat bit that sits on top of the head, and the curve that comes down and joins that, and there from there that's where the brim of that hat is bent up against my leg. And a curve back to where the brim is, and these things kind of meet back up. You can see a little bit of the underbelly of that brim in the shadows. Coming back out from this way is actually my other knee that my hand is resting on. So it might just seem like a very, very dark highlight area down at the bottom of the picture, but it gives you an indication where a knee is that the hand is sitting on, and the hand you can definitely see with a hat, and it's got a lot of detail on it, but it needs to have that little bit of support so it looks like you're resting your hand on your knee. You know, these things have to kind of meet and match. You can't kind of just throw in a shape because it's in the shadows and nobody will see it. Often those little marks give you a great sense of where the form is. Hey Ethan, hello. That's my son Ethan. How are you, son? Hope you're doing well. You're in Holland. Hope your days are easier. I'm not sure how your lockdown's going on over there, whether it's as tough as the lockdown is here. Hopefully you're getting out and about a little bit, going for your daily walks. It's important to do that. Missed you for Christmas. Really wish you were here, and hope you had a good New Year, even if you're just by yourself. You know that we're always on the end of a telephone if you need to. Family reunion, everybody. So yeah, I'm starting to get now a better sense of where certain things are. I can't quite see the elbow, but there's bits of highlight of hair which kind of suggest where hair is, and they come almost in line with that element of my wrist, so I get a greater sense of that's where my shoulder is. So as you can see, taking your time to build where your location is before we get into rendering, before we get into detail, before we get down into layers and building up charcoal, this is a really key point. This is the architecture of your drawing. This is where you're going to put all of that hard work onto, and you need to make sure that this is right first. Rushing this will make your drawing twice as difficult, and often your detailing won't be quite as well positioned because this isn't right. So if I can kind of emphasize this to you, take your time doing this. I know I'm kind of blattering this out within sort of 40 minutes or so, and talking at the same time. It's only because I'm kind of being more accurate and clinical about where things are going. There's more work to do certainly before I go into the rendering area. Something I'll kind of continue with over the next few hours of me doing this portrait. As I say, I'm going to try and do this quickly, not necessarily just for the sake of speed, but for the sake of the competition this is for. is over a period of 4 hours, so I need to kind of keep that in mind, that anything I do I can achieve if I went on to the next stage. Now, it's not to say that a good portrait is done in 4 hours. It's not. You know, the more time you've got, spend that time. And they don't expect you to do it in a short period of time. You can spend 4 or 5 weeks to do it. You could spend 6 months in preparation to do it. So take your time with your portraits. It's not so fast portraits don't make good portraits, but accurate portraits, no matter how whether they're done fast or quickly, that's what makes an interesting portrait. If you like. I'll draw a little indication of where this headband that I've got around my wrist is as well. You can kind of see that shape. I'm drawing that negative shape rather than drawing the wristband of where that line comes up, that line comes down, and this one comes down further this way, and this is further down this way, and that shape is developed out of straight lines. Although it's curved, it's a curved headband going around my wrist. I'm making it out of straight lines at the beginning just to get positioning of it. Then I can get the idea of where that cuff comes out, which is a little bit straighter. Then there's a kind of curve before it hits the first kind of wrinkle of that jumper, and then the wrinkle of the jumper goes straight into another one, and then there's a bit of a curve there, and it maybe curves down a little bit more here, and then straight over there. This comes in a little bit and then back down this way. I can see how much my elbow is joined to my knee, shape wise that way. Coming out that way, back up. Again, all these kind of straightish angles that I'm putting in. It disappears here. I can't really see. There's a small indication of where that actually joins into my body. A very, very, very subtle line there. And then the top of that fly joining down. So what I'm actually drawing here is this negative shape, the space in between my elbow, my body, my leg, and putting those things together. You're still in lockdown. You can spend New Year's drinking with friends on Discord call. At least you didn't have to get a taxi home. I suppose that's a good thing. I think we put on YouTube videos and danced around the living room. There's a shadow just above the top of this knee here, which creates like a diamond shape as the front part of the knee, which is quite interesting. There's a straight line there, and then it comes down as a shadow here, and here's my pointy knobbly knees, and it goes straight up that way and back down this way, and then there's a crease that way, and it goes down this way. So it starts to indicate, you know, where the front part of this shin is. Folds and wrinkles in material, again, it can be very tempting just to throw in a texture anywhere, and you know, render the texture of folded material. If the folds don't follow the form, it looks weird. So if I don't put creases in where my knee joins my thigh, it will throw it out. So if I just randomly put in little marks and it's down here somewhere, my knee can't possibly be that wide in comparison to the rest of it. So be careful you don't fall into those traps. What else have you been doing? You've been doing a bit of gaming development at uni. We're nearing the end of the development for this block. It's been a lot of fun. Good, that's good to hear. We did a presentation on playtesting and conclusions off Rhino. Cool. Again, I'm guessing a lot of your work at the minute, Ethan, is online. Certainly there's a lot of students out there who've been working with who, because of this lockdown, they're not in school, and they're getting lots and lots of subject matters and all being fired homework, and it can be quite an overwhelming aspect of learning at the moment. It's a new way of learning, if you like. Certainly being face to face in the classroom can be a lot easier, because if you have a problem straight away, you can just put your hand up and ask. But it also, I think, builds you a great self-reliance as well. You're the person that has to push your education at the moment. A lot of university students are all saying the same thing. They're paying vast fees, and their education is them in a room. But it's a level of your input, whether you're in a physical classroom, in a university, or at home yourself. It always comes down to you. So well done. I know it's a bit frustrating seeing real people. I bet I don't think you've had your Freshers Week, have you? Yeah, getting feedback is really tough. And it's funny, we were mentioning it earlier on, getting feedback on your artwork is very valuable, or feedback on your work that you're doing is very valuable. And it's really hard to show that in this kind of format. Even on this, your perception of what's on your screen is down to the resolution. It can be down to the broadband rate that you have, how clear your picture is. It can be down to my broadband rate as to how the feed is going from my computer to the internet. So there's lots of things that you're not quite seeing that are better in real life. But 20 years ago we wouldn't have even had this. So you've got to count your chickens, really. I'm sure technology is improving as the level of frustrations are building for people. Solutions are being sought after by companies around the world. So better broadband rates and faster computers and better quality cameras that don't switch off during streaming. I don't know if you saw the first stream that I was doing there, it just completely crashed. Also, your Fresh Week was all online. Okay. Okay. Starting to be a little bit more definite now. With some of these marks. Again, if you took that shape out of context of the hand I'm drawing down here, was show somebody on the street and say, what do you think that is? They wouldn't know. It's such an abstract shape, but in comparison with what I'm drawing and with the image in front of me, it's really helped me see what is a hand, what is the hand I'm drawing. I can see the space and how these fingers join together in a specific way. My finger is actually slightly bent. It was an accident when I was a kid. I was mucking around with my dad, accidentally broke my finger. Just play fighting. But there's a slight kink to it. So because it's my finger, I can't just draw any old shape of hand in there as well. It's got to be related to me. So even with portraiture is just about the face, it's not. It can be about the hands, it can be about the body, it can be about how you sit, and all those different elements all go up to make a portrait. It's not just about how somebody physically looks in their face. Could you call the drawing? Waiting for the camera to boot up. Well, yeah, that level of frustration in my face is going, I hate computers. Oh, it's like it's frozen or something like that, frozen in time. But yeah, waiting for the camera, waiting for the internet. It's funny. It's funny because you could easily project that onto this picture and definitely say that's what this is about. Oh, I like that. I might nick it. Maybe I'm starting to put that third finger in while the spaces, so it's not accurate maybe as much as it needs to be just yet, but I'm starting to get the space of where the fingers are in relationship to the rest of this hand. This might actually change where this little finger is a little bit. Just concentrating a little bit about that brim and that little finger, because I think that's a little bit, it's too flat, I think. Yeah. There we go. That's better. So all these darker marks underneath will be okay because I can kind of phase in, but I'm still going to rub that back when it comes to, before I start rendering, because I want to get the shape better. I'm starting to feel the shape starting to come a little bit, but I do think this needs to be a little bit more upright this way. I'm being a little bit more defined now with this hand, just to give me a crisper edge, because a lot of the hand, it has a sharper edge around it. I have a very strange shaped thumb. I don't know if you notice the my thumb is quite bent there. So I have a big knuckle at the tip of my thumb, and how my hands actually sit like that. Again, if this is somebody else's hand, it has to be of their hand. You know, you can't just put any generic hand on it. These things are still part of the portraiture, so you can't cheat them. A dad stream. Yeah, I quite like that, dad streams. I was listening to a really good podcast with Dave Grohl, and he's been interviewed by a lady who was a comedian, I think, and he got interviewed by some idiot in London, and who said, "Oh yeah, what's it like to be in a dad band?" I mean, then the Foo Fighters called a dad band, and he went, well, "It is kind of accurate that we are all dads, so they are all dads, but it's the Foo Fighters." I mean, there you go. I'm getting happier where that thumb is now. There we go. I'm starting to place just little marks where knuckles are as well in relationship to the hand, and how these knuckles relate to each other, and the angles that they sit. A little bit of mark there, and that this one is further back. This helps kind of find how that is actually gripping. It's slightly curved around the hat, so it's not my hand like straight and flat. You've got to think when the hands are curved, the knuckles change. They go into a curve. These knuckles curve. So it's how this hand is slightly cusping the edge of the hat itself. How these knuckles fall over that shape. The level plane of the hand, how that's angled from the wrist that's coming down. So you've got to put all these bits together as shapes rather than things, because often hands trip people up because they try and draw them just like gloves, if you like, and they're animated. They're no different from an arm and a leg and a body. You know, they're just shapes moving around a form. I'm going to readjust where this knuckle is here, because I had it sat back here. It needs to go further forward. There's a bit of suggestion that it's kind of straight there. Give you space to this knuckle. And there's a tendon which comes off, which goes straight back into the hand this way. And this one that's down here is back there, goes up. There's a highlight then, comes down this way, and the space of that brim comes out this way. So it can look a bit wobbly sometimes when you're first starting off. You know, if it doesn't look quite right, you're not too sure what it is, take a break from it. Don't try and force the issue. And that's where that little finger comes out and around, and it ends there. So initially when I started it, my little finger was out here, it's moved back to there, now it's here. That'll have a knock-on effect to where the end of this little finger is here. Was it this second finger and this third finger? And then coming up to the top of there. So you can see how these fingers are actually built up. Glad to see you use the sharp angular strokes rather than curved strokes. Learning not to do flowy lines has been a big help for me. Yeah, it kind of breaks curves down into straight lines. I always think of it like a coin, like a 50p piece, or a pound coin that we get here in the UK. This pound coin's got like 20 straight sides to it, but you can roll it and it looks like a circle from a distance, and you can break all of these things down. And a lot of the artists that I've been looking at, like David Cassan and nearly all of them, Juliet Aristides and the portrait of the figure that we were doing before, you know, some of these marks are literally starting off big marks that are big straight lines, and as we break it down they become smaller. The flow lines that we get in animation, you know, where you get a flow line, they can give you the attitude or the animation of a figure, but then to build and render that up, you can break it down. So I know when it comes to doing things on when you're digitizing figures, and you build like a skeletal armature, and then you render over the top of that kind of triangles to get the form, and it looks very blocky to begin with, and then you over the triangular scaling that goes around the figure, you can then render on top of that the material, or skin or whatever it is you're doing, and that's how you build up something that has a certain sense of life to it, if you like. So yeah, it starts off with straight lines to begin with, but these straight lines have become quite expressive as well. Now looking at my cheekbone there, coming back down to the angle of my chin this way, come back over, look at again shape and space, you know, the difference between where this angular triangle is, where my cheekbone is, coming back down to where the shape of my beard is, and the space between that and the top part of my beard from my moustache coming out gives me an angle of where the hair comes up and meets the bottom half of my nose. So I'm not having to figure out where my nose is, the lines are doing it for me. You know, all these lines and shapes and angles, when they start to fit together, tell you where things are, like the details are, and you're not having to figure out, oh, where do I put a nostril in this big white space in the middle of the face, and oh, I have to put a nostril in, I'll just stick it in there. Well, if you're using all of these shapes and lines to kind of indicate where things are, you don't have to guess anymore. You know where it goes, and it makes it so much easier. It makes it kind of just a formula. On top of the formula of doing something like this, you start to then fill in, you know, the artistry of it, the expression of it. You can leave in marks that are bold. I can put a bolder mark in there because I know where to literally follow the line to put bold marks in. So if that makes sense. Now, let's say if we look at a Sargent picture, he will consider where his hand is going on his page by looking exactly where he's almost orientating his hand to where things are. He'll walk up and then make the mark because he would have studied where his hand is going to go first. I like a bit more sculptural thing where I can put a mark down, adjust it, move it, play with it, you know, all those types of things help to build up my artwork. So as I say, I'm not trying to replicate Sargent, but I'm certainly aware, looking at that book and some of the portraits I've been doing in the last few weeks have certainly helped me guide where I'd like my artwork to go. Hope that makes sense. It's good, it's just gone past 4 now. As I say, apologies for the delay in the stream today. I started it off, we had somebody drop in and give us a bit of abuse, and then that was a bit of distraction, and then the camera was stopped and all of those things. So a small little break, and it's a bit like a slow engine turning where it feels a bit clunky to begin with. I'll be back again next week, and I'll be carrying on. I've finishing this portrait off, or I hopefully would have had it done, and I'll be working on something else new. It helps Sargent that he was super close to his subjects. From what I remember, yes, he was. Yeah, very close. He literally did sight size. His figure was there, his portrait was there, and he did it. And it was literally there to there. You know, he didn't move around, looking at 3 to 4 different cameras and talking to a camera at the same time. So yeah, it definitely helped him. Have a look at artwork, have a look at art books. You know, find an artist that you really like, go and investigate. Find out how they're doing their work. Study them, read about them, find out the story about why they do what they do. It can give you a greater sense and direction for you in your artwork. Look at the artwork that you like, try to pick out what it is you really like about it, find out why they did it that way. It gives you a great focus for your own artwork when you are doing your marks. It's almost like a constant reminder, oh, this is what I want from this drawing, this portrait. But I'm quite happy at the moment as to the structure and how that started to develop. So I'm quite pleased with, in a relatively short period of time, the information that I've got down for the portrait. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that made a bit of sense. So it's very rare to get a finished picture done within 2 hours from me. Yeah, so hopefully next week we'll be back here at 2 o'clock with all cameras working. It's great to be back. It's great to see so many of you guys joining me as well. Thank you for that. And I'll see you next Saturday about 2 o'clock. Until then, if you have any questions, you can put them in the notes. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to the channel so you know when we're going live again. If you want to send me a message, ask me something specific, you can do. If you don't feel confident, do it in the chat room, more than welcome. So yeah, thank you so much. Ethan, it is such a treat to see you. Thank you for saying hello. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to catch it too, son. Miss you, love you lots, and see you soon. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get this bloody lockdown out of the way. Be good. Alright guys, thank you so much. I'll see you again soon. Alright, take care till next week. Bye.